Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Federico Talks Watches. Today, I'm going to talk about an interesting subject, a subject that many of you guys would think is common sense, and many of you collectors, experienced collectors, probably know not to do. But running a service center, I've seen some pretty stupid stuff. Repairing watches. And some of the things are obvious, some of them are not so obvious. So today I'm going to talk about the 7 things you shouldn't do to or with your watch, things that might very likely or, eventually cause your watch harm. Now, before we get started, customary wristwatch check. Today I'm wearing my Panerai PAM 111 Luminor Marina, one of my first ever luxury watches. Haven't worn it in a while, but I figured, it's the weekend. Let's put on something with rubber. Actually, that sounds really bad. Yes, and of course, please go check out Del Rey Watch Supply, delreywatch.com. Got a bunch of new watches in, a no-date sub, full box and papers, a mint condition JLC Reverso, priced very well. Also, with box and papers, a few Seamaster GMTs that we picked up at the show that are very interesting. And if you guys want hot horology but on a budget, check out my Maurice Lacroix Double Retrograde. All that and a lot more, including a few watches we put discounts on in the hot deal section. All that and more at delreywatch.com. But let's get right into it. These are in no particular order, and as I said, some of these are really obvious. Some of these are not so obvious, but these are things you shouldn't do with your watch. Now, the first one is only applies to chronograph watches using the Valjoux 7750 movement, the most common chronograph movement ever made. And this is something that every sales associate should tell their customers when buying it, but they just don't. And a lot of people actually don't know this. And that is, you should not use the quick set on your date. You should not change the date of your watch between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. Because during that time, when the hands are between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., the date mechanism is actually engaged, ready to switch the date at midnight. So if you pull out the quick set and you try and quick set the date, you could damage the date wheel. And this you're not going to damage it if you do it once or maybe even twice, but it is very, very common to damage the date discs. So the easiest way, if you can't remember if it's 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., is just when you want to quick set the date, move both hands of the watch to the southern hemisphere, so to the bottom part of the dial. That way, the quick set, the date mechanism is not engaged at all, and you can quick set your date. So guys, remember, do not change the date between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. This could save you paying for a costly service. The second item is, do not use your chronograph. Do not engage or reset your chronograph when the watch is stopped or has no power reserve. On modern movements like the 7750, this doesn't do much harm, but on older movements like Valjoux Caliber 22s, Valjoux 7734s, Lemanias, this actually can harm the mechanism. It can cause undue friction, and it can misalign the hands. So it is a bad idea to play with the chronograph buttons, engaging and resetting when the watch is not running. And I know sometimes I just pick up a watch and I'll start it, and the watch isn't running. Once again, no big deal if it's done once or twice, but in the long term, you will get a hefty service bill. So remember that. If it's not running, don't mess with the chronograph. Number 3. This is going to cause, might get me a lot of hate from watch collectors, particularly vintage collectors, but every watchmaker I know has mentioned this, and that is, do not open up the case back of your watch, be it a vintage watch or a modern watch, because this can do 2 things. First of all, if it's a modern watch, how do you know it's watertight when you close it back up? How do you know you didn't tear a seal? How do you know that you closed it tightly enough? But that's not the important part. The important part is a movement is very, very fragile. And I've seen this happen even here, where I'll open up a watch, I'll have my watchmaker open up a watch just to regulate it, and you can dislodge a tiny piece of debris in the movement, be it a little speck of dust or some dried out lubrication, or maybe you introduce something that was not in the movement before, and all of a sudden the watch that was working perfectly has extremely low amplitude and is running like poop. And that is a risk every time you open up a watch, which is why, for example, my watchmaker Hansi says, if anybody opens a watch, we drop the warranty right away. And I see people opening up watches on Instagram and on Facebook and taking pictures, and I get it. It's super cool to see what's in there. It really is super interesting. God knows I've opened up case backs before as well, but trust me, it is not a good idea. No good can come from it. And I'm not saying you're going to absolutely ruin your watch, but it takes very, very little to get a very well-running movement to not be running so well anymore. It's closed, it's a hermetically sealed environment. If it's water resistant, if not, it's at least dust proof, and you just don't want to mess with exposed watch movements. And, God, I would think that this would be obvious, but I see this all the time, and it's an awful idea. Number 4 is something that has been mentioned by a lot of YouTubers, bad advice, including myself in the past. And that is, if you don't know what you're doing, and if you're not a watchmaker, do not use a home demagnetizer. I see a lot of YouTubers, including myself, have said it's an essential tool for the watch collector. Yeah, it's an awful idea. So I do apologize if I've said that in the past. So a demagnetizer takes magnetism away from a watch. If it's running a little fast, you can demagnetize it. A lot of times it fixes it. But did you know if your watch is not magnetized and you put it on the demagnetizer, you will magnetize your watch? And a lot of guys, they don't have a time grapher at home, so they don't know if it's magnetized or not. They'll just put it on the demagnetizer because they think it's running a little fast, and then they'll magnetize the whole watch. Not to mention, if you press the button, there's a little button on the demagnetizer. If you press it for too long, you could magnetize the whole case, in which case you have to take the watch completely apart to demagnetize it. Point is, as with a lot of these things, is I'm not saying you're going to ruin your watch if you do it, but there's a high risk that you will cause some harm if you don't know what you're doing. Leave the watchmaking to the professionals. Most watch repair guys will demagnetize your watch for free if it's magnetized. It takes a second. But you or me or whoever with no knowledge should not go on Amazon.com and buy a demagnetizer and play amateur watchmaker, because honestly, you'll do more harm than good. And actually, I've figured this out the hard way. Sorry I was very passionate, but I demagnetized a watch in the office once, and it was running like crap. So I brought it to Hans, my watchmaker, and I said, Hans, I demagnetized it. I can't figure it out. And I've demagnetized, dozens, I don't want to say hundreds, but dozens of watches. I kind of know what I'm doing. Turns out I magnetized the entire gold case, and it took Hans hours of labor to fix my mistake. Now, if I'm capable of doing it, and I've worked at many watch stores, I have a rudimentary understanding of watchmaking, imagine what an amateur can do. So just a bad idea. The 4th one is one that a lot of people don't know, and probably won't cause harm, but better safe than sorry. And that is, do not take your watch into a hot tub or sauna. Now, why is this? Particularly if you're wearing a Panerai Submariner, your watch is water resistant, right? Absolutely it is. But the steam, the very warm water, the bubbles, they can eat away at the crown seals. So while you're probably good if you do it once or twice, long term it will make your seals perish, the rubber seals perish a lot faster than normal. So generally, good idea to take off your watch if you're going into a hot tub or sauna. Number 6, and this is another one that a lot of people don't know, but it's, you don't want to wear your watch, even if it's a super rugged sports watch, Panerai or Rolex, you don't want to wear it during high impact activity. And high impact doesn't mean directly on the watch. Good example, playing golf, swinging, that's a high impact activity. And doing that consistently throughout the day could cause your watch to lose its regulation. Another good example is motorcycles. When you're riding a motorcycle, sometimes you get the vibrations, and that, I just hit the microphone, and that could mess with the watch, the vibration. Once again, not guaranteed to do it if you just do it once, but generally a bad idea to take your watch golfing or on a motorcycle, any place where there's a vibration or sudden impacts, even if it's not directly on the piece, generally a bad idea. And then the seventh and last one, and this is the most obvious, but I've seen it done way too many times to not mention it. And that is, guys, please don't use your chronographs underwater, even if it's a water-resistant chronograph, like a Breitling Chronomatter or Daytona. So those have screw-down plungers, screw-down pushers for the chronograph. But the whole point is, the screw-down bits are meant to keep the water out. Once you go underwater and you press the pushers, you're opening up a hole into the case, and water can get in. There are a few specialty-made chronographs meant for underwater use, but those are very rare. But even if your chronograph is water-resistant, do not push the pushers underwater. Anyway, guys, those are just 7 little pieces of advice. I know a lot of you guys might think they're very, very obvious. However, I think it needed to be said. I think for a lot of newer collectors, this video could be valuable. And let's not forget, not everybody is a seasoned watch collector like me, or very likely you. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to Federico Talks Watches so you don't miss any content. Guys, thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.